Yes, that's right. It's Joe here live for Joyrider TV, back with some more Q&A. Yes, we've got a very exciting session planned and many exciting topics, interesting topics that we are going to be addressing in the next hour or so. So what we're going to be looking at is, in no particular order, we're going to be looking at reducing independent hull movement. When your hulls do this, how we can get rid of a bit of that. We're going to be looking at improving your upwind performance. We're going to be looking at, as part of improving your upwind performance, something that is rarely talked about, which is moving your traveler actually to the windward side to get your boom into the centerline, which can improve your performance, or can it? And then we're going to be looking at, as a very interesting physics lesson, do you get more boat speed sailing in saltwater or freshwater? And of course, we're going to be addressing many other topics throughout this session. So steaming straight in, this is a question that has come in from Miranda R6, who I believe to be in Sweden. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. And the question is it possible to transform a regular Hobie 14 into a turbo version? Answer: yes, it is, because all of the geometry of the boat is the same on the regular Hobie 14 and the Hobie 14 Turbo. So what do we need to do? First, what is a turbo Hobie 14? It's basically a Hobie 14 with a jib. I don't even need to draw that. And the turbo version of the Hobie 14 is a rolling jib as standard. So if we just look at what we would have to do that, first thing is, if this is our Hobie 14 and if we don't have a dolphin striker, so this would be like, I think the dolphin striker on the Hobie 14 was introduced back in the early 80s. So if your boat doesn't have a dolphin striker and you want to turn it into a turbo, now this is going to increase the amount of power that you have on the boat. Also, if with the turbo, what would you call it, fitting, you're going to add a trapeze as well, if it doesn't have one, you should really consider fitting a dolphin striker. These can be retrofitted, and if you're in the USA, best place to get all the parts you need would be Murray's, which I believe is in San Diego, California, USA. Yeah, so dolphin striker, first thing you are going to need. Next thing you are going to need is the actual jib and furler. And the standard way of fitting it is what you would have originally. You'd obviously have your bridle wires, and they would go onto a forestay wire, and that would be the nature of your rigging. With the turbo kit as standard, what you would have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have, instead of a forestay wire complete, you'd have what is known as, sorry, that's just in the way ever so slightly. You'd have a pigtail. On the end of that pigtail, you'd have a furler, and then next would be the jib, which would then attach to the chain plate on the front. So it would actually be the jib, the luff of the jib, the front edge of the jib would be replacing the forestay. Yeah, so pigtail, swivel, jib, furler, bridle wires. So that is what you would need at the front. And then this is going to be the major trick shot. So actually, before we go on to the trick shot, what about, so how do we put the jib up? Well, the idea is, I would believe that you put your mast down, connect the jib up. It should all be a predetermined length, and you'll have a chain plate like this with the furler underneath it. The furler is the thing that's going to roll it up. And then you attach the jib to the pigtail, put your mast up, connecting the furler at the bottom, so it's all connected up. And then once the mast is up, if you needed to alter your mast rake, you'd need to recruit a friend, or perhaps tie your trapeze wire to a tree or something in front of the boat to pull the mast forwards. And then you can move the tack of the jib down if you want the mast more upright, or up if you want it further back. Okay, so that is how you would actually go about putting the jib up in the first place. So trick shot is going to be on the boats which are supplied as a Hobie 14 turbo. What you have is, if this is the platform, we've got our sidebars, and where the shroud connects here, this plate actually goes, all right, if this is the side of the sidebar, the plate that the shroud connects onto is like this, and that will actually go round the bottom of the sidebar, and then it will have another, if we go kind of bad 3D, let's call it. So there we've got where the shroud attaches onto there, and then we have another hole. So this is going round underneath the sidebar, and then what we have is going between these two plates, we have a cable, a wire cable, which can be tightened with a bottle screw. And then, so that is a bit of a trick shot. So that's going to be an extra thing to do. But the reason that we need that cable is because we have a hole in the trampoline here, like with an eyelet, a hole in the trampoline here with an eyelet, and that is what the jib blocks are going to attach onto. The jib block's going to attach through the trampoline and like that. Now, if you weren't too worried about being having the best possible sail shape, there are other ways that you could do it. Like, you could attach jib blocks to the front beam, you could attach jib blocks to the shrouds, or you could do some sort of lash up, or you could have a rope running across the top of the trampoline pulled very tight, which you attach your jib blocks onto. Yeah, so there's a few options, workarounds there if you didn't want to have to get your trampoline modified with eyelets. If you were going to get your trampoline modified, the recommendation would to be, if this was the area of trampoline here, get a reinforced patch on the area that you're going to put the eyelets. Then the eyelet goes through the trampoline and through the reinforcement, not just through the mesh, because the mesh of the trampoline is probably going to be not strong enough. So there you go, Miranda. I hope that helps. But putting the jib on the 14 really does change things quite significantly, especially making it very much easier to tack. Just like to say hello to everybody who's tuning in, and hello firstly to Cucks Ollie, who is kicking this session off with the super sticker. The super stickers are available just next to the chat window at, do you call that a window, at the bottom. It's a great way of supporting Joyrider TV. It shows that you appreciate this great information, and perhaps most importantly, it is what is keeping the Q&A ad-free. If you don't like ads, and if you think this information is good, then hit the super sticker or super chat or whatever it's called today. Yes. Also, later on in this session, remind me if I forget as well, I've got some very exciting news just in. And this news would be for people in Europe, more so than for those the other side of the Atlantic. I'm just assuming that nobody in Australia is watching right now because it would be past bedtime. Do let me know if you're watching in Australia because I would like to at least congratulate you for being up this late. All right. So just into the live chat now. So in pole position in the live chat, we've got Levi, who has just competed in his first ever, I think it's first ever regatta. Oh, he actually said, sailed my second regatta last weekend. And a sailor told me that my batten tension was not enough. And that was contributing to a lack of boat speed. So how do we know if our batten tension is not enough? The first thing that we could look at is if this is our sail, looks like a sail, and we've got our batten pockets, just 3 battens today. Yeah, the absolute warning sign that your battens are too loose will be if there are creases like this in your batten pockets. Those creases, when you're hoisting your sail, you can have a look at your batten pockets and you could just, even if it looks like there's not a bit of tension in the batten pocket, then that would be your battens are too loose. So first thing we need to do is get rid of these creases. Now, if we're going to be a bit more scientific about it, what we want to do is get the sail unrolled in a very flat situation, like somewhere with a very flat floor, like a car park if it's not too hot, or a patio, just somewhere hot. Garage, another good one. And we'll unroll the sail on the floor. Now, looking from the end, that is what, in fact, that's the floor. And then what we want to do with our batten tension is pull enough on just so that the ends of the sails, if you can see that, this is a very precise drawing, just so that the front end and the back end, the luff and the leech of the sail at those battens lifts off the floor ever so slightly. And what you're looking for is to have all of your battens doing exactly the same thing there. And that is going to give you the best curve profile in your sail for a wide range of conditions. Now, if you really want to turbocharge your boat in moderate or marginal conditions, when the wind is kind of enough to start lifting the hull, but perhaps not so much that you want to start depowering, then that is when you could put some more batten tension in so that it lifts a bit more like an inch off the floor at each end, again making sure that all of that tension is even. Now, one thing that's going to make a difference to your ability to getting it even is if all of your battens are the same stiffness. Now, how can we look at that? Okay, there is a scientific way that we can do it, and that is using a set of bathroom scales. So this is pretty good. If you take your bathroom scales, there we are, and have your batten on its end, obviously you're going to be holding it and you're going to be pushing down from the top of the batten, and you're going to see what number the bathroom scales say that you have to push to get curve into that batten. That is going to tell you how stiff your batten is. So a higher number means your batten is stiffer. A lower number means your batten is softer. Now, of course, when you get to these top battens, which are much softer, much shorter, it is going to naturally require more push to get them to curve. So in light to moderate winds, you might want to consider a softer batten in the top of the sail, or the top two battens perhaps. So there we go. I hope that is helpful. Talking about battens, who else is on board? All right, Levi continues. Where are we? Training this weekend, then racing the next two. Nice, been learning a lot. 95% of all my sailing experience has been on the race course, like drinking from a fire hose. Nice. All right, Christian is on board. Christian in, I believe, British Columbia, who is revving up for the race to Alaska. Yes, this is one of the most hardcore long distance races on the planet, and Christian is going to be taking it on, I believe, on a Supercats 17. And yes, I have got a preloaded question from Christian, which we're going to be coming on to in a short time. Oh yes, we are. All right, Cuxolly is on board, as we know, because Cuxolly chucked in the super sticker. All right, Ryan in Maui on board. This is great. I think almost everybody who is in the live chat is a channel member. Very nice to have a good representation from the channel members. Very good. Ryan says the pigtail hardware is mega bucks pricey. Yeah, so you could, have I got one here? Yeah, you could, these pigtail wire strops, like basically short bits of rigging wire, could be made by anyone who can make rigging. You just say what length you want. Obviously you need to know the length, and then they can make it just with a fairly standard wire splice on the ends. And then you could buy a swivel like this bad boy. This is from Alan. Look at that go. Whew. Yeah, that was pretty satisfying. I think see why people like doing things like that. Then buy a swivel like that, and that will do. And I dare say from Hobie, yeah, you're looking at quite a lot of money for that. All right, we got Bernhard on board in Austria. Season starts in Austria next week. Yes, I dare say that would be time to break out the dry suit. Pretty chilly. All right, we got Hans on board in Germany. Great to have you on board, Hans. We've got Laura tuning in from the Mississippi, ready to hook some crab parts this spring. Yeah, if you are going sailing this spring, do pay attention for those crab pots, because they can cause you a disturbance if they pop up in front of you. Great to have you on board there, Laura. We've got Johnny Hughes on board in Fort Worth, Texas. Yes. Ryan said, what's the Dolphin Striker post look like for the 14? Same as, yeah, okay. Is the Hobie 14 Dolphin Striker post the same as for the 16? If the boat is of a vintage, of an age where it was factory fitted, then yes, it's exactly the same as that on a Hobie 16. If you are retrofitting, or if the boat has been retrofitted with a Dolphin Striker, then the Dolphin Striker is actually riveted onto the front beam. So no, you don't have to drill a big hole down the middle of the front beam. So I think be easiest to see side on. So there's the front beam, and then this is the dolphin striker. So it follows, it's like got, what is it? It's like cast aluminium, I believe, which kind of follows the contour of the beam, and then something like this. So this is all cast aluminium, and then I think retrofitting, you actually run a cable through the bottom of that dolphin striker fitting rather than a metal rod. There you go. All right. Just like to give a big shout out to Tom for SSN. I'm thinking that might be a Thomas. Hello from Germany. The lake is ice free and the Hobie Tiger starts to ride last week. Nice. Yeah, so Thomas is a new Joyrider membership. He's sent one Joyrider TV gift membership. Very good idea there. Nice. I'm just being told that in the live chat. I'm not entirely sure what it means. Okay, and then we have new the receiver of that gift membership. You must be very pleased. Kivan Gunnelp. Nice to have you on board as a channel member. All right. Sorry if this seems a bit messy at this time. Always is in the live chat early doors, I think you'll find. And you're not going to believe who is in the live chat. It's the one and only Bobby Bruce, the operator of the Hobie 21 SE. Bobby Bruce would like to say, and I think I've got something here to go with this, just a reminder that the Mad Catter 50th anniversary is coming up, and it already has over 100 entries. Yeah, that's possibly one of the events, one of the many events that I am the most gutted not to be attending this year. Yeah, so if you can get to the Mad Catter, I believe it is in New York State, USA, and it is going to be quite an occasion. So yeah, check that one out. Nice one, Bobby. All right, so banging in to the next preloaded question, and this one is from Aline, who says, we own a Hobie Cat 16, good choice, and have noticed some play between the pylons and the platform. Okay, yes, for the regular attendee of the live Q&A, this might sound like something we've been over before, but we're going to talk about it again. But when we talk about things for a second or fifth time, I find I'm always coming out with some other angle for the same thing. So there's always something new in there. So how can we reduce this independent hull movement? You know, here is our boat. When you lift this hull up, this hull doesn't move. Yeah, feels a bit sloppy on the beach. What you want is when you lift this hull up, this hull comes up as well. Yeah, so generally this independent hull movement comes from where there's the top of the hull, there's the pylons, and then onto the pylons we have the castings which sit over the top of the pylons. And what is creating that hull movement, hopefully, is that there is a gap appeared. The pylon has the same profile as a mast, and then the casting fits round the side of the pylon like that. There we go. yeah, so this is the pylon here. Yeah, so why, firstly, why hopefully is your independent hull movement coming from there being a gap between these two? Because get yourself a friend and get your friend to lift one of the hulls to make this effect of one hull going up, the other sitting on the floor as a test. And then while that hull is going up and down, go and take a look at your pylons and look at where that movement is coming from. If the movement is coming from here, then that is good, because that is something that we can do about reasonably easily. However, if the movement, let's go for a different color, shall we? It's that kind of day. If the movement is coming from here, where the pylons enter the hulls, then that is much more sinister, and that is going to require the attention of a boat builder to fix, because what that means is what's going on inside the hull is, we're now going inside the hull, the pylon goes into the hull almost all the way to the bottom, not all the way to the bottom because it would be too wide, and that is glassed in to a fiberglass block, which is then glassed in to the hull. So if the movement is coming from this join here, then it means that somewhere in there things have got loose, which means major surgery to fix, which is a job for a professional boat builder, because it would probably involve making a hole in the side of the boat or in the deck of the boat, and then getting in there with some chemicals to glue it all back together. Yes. So what we can do is we can do something about this gap between the casting and the pylon. And what that is going to be is we could firstly try packing it out with some sort of material. Like if just looking around for inspiration, none. Yeah, so what sort of material could we pack it out with? I think what's good is, if you've just got a very small gap, is you could take the sort of packaging material, plastic, which what would come in that sort of packaging? A great many things. The sort of package, like this plastic packaging, which maybe a an SD card would come in, or a USB stick, that sort of thing. This plastic packaging that you need a pair of scissors to get into, that sort of thin plastic, if it's just a small gap between the pylon and the beam. If the gap is a bit bigger, then what you could actually use is take an old detergent container and cut a piece of detergent container to go in the gap. So you could actually cut a piece, wang it in the gap on that side and on that side, take the bolt out first, bolt that goes through the hole, take that bolt out, put some detergent packaging material into the hole, try to cut it so it's the right size, and then take a drill, drill through that packaging where it's in the right spot for the bolt, then put the bolt through, and then see how much that has altered this independent hull movement. Now, the ultimate, and this is what I did with my 16, is, if full commitment, is to actually take the boat apart and use epoxy resin to glue the boat together. So on my boat now, the pylons are actually glued with epoxy to the beams. So it went from being really loose, like probably lift one bow about a foot and the other one is still on the floor. It went from that to being perfectly stiff like a new boat, but means that I can't take it apart. No, there we go. So I hope that helps. And I hope that is very interesting for everyone. All right. So yes, that's right. I haven't forgotten yet. Big announcement that I just learned today. Coming up later in this session. Very good. Next preloaded question. And this is, let's say, if there was going to be one juicy question, I know made quite a lot out of that last one and the one before, but if there was going to be one juicy question in the Q&A, I would say it is this one. And this one comes from Tim. Would you believe? Who sails a Hobie 16 in North Carolina. And a similar question came from Christian, who's in the live chat at the moment in British Columbia, Canada. Different boats, but a similar kind of vibe. So Tim's wording of the question is, both jib and main are tight. Jib telltales are flying straight back. Wind angle is correct. But wind about 8 to 10 knots. Any suggestions on getting closer to the wind? Yes, so we're talking about pointing in 8 to 10 knots of wind. Now, the first thing that we need to consider, yeah, I actually made notes on this to keep me on track, is we need to manage our expectations of what we can achieve in terms of pointing, not only on a Hobie 16, but on a Supercat 17 as well, on any type of boat, any type of catamaran. If you are sailing in a mixed fleet where there are catamarans of different types and there are monohulls as well, so you might be seeing that there are monohulls. This is a monohull, by the way, and these monohulls could probably sail a good 5 degrees closer to the wind than you on your catamaran. If you're sailing in a mixed catamaran fleet, so if you're sailing against, like, if this is maybe there's an A class or an F18, these are going to sail much closer to the wind. So you have to manage your expectations. On a Hobie 16, you're not going to be able to sail as close to the wind as a boat with dagger boards or a monohull. That is the first thing. So what can we do next? What did I write here? Okay, so 10 knots of wind. This is when we should just be starting to get a little bit of lift out of the windward hull. So what should we be looking for? Just going to have 2 of those. This is my jib telltale window in the jib, which is where your jib telltales generally are. So this is the front of the jib. So that makes this the starboard side, which makes that the port side. First thing, most importantly, at all times, is the telltale that you can see through the jib should always be flying straight back. 8 to 10 knots of wind, that's when you want to have the jib sheet pretty tight. I'd just like to say big thanks to Ryan in Maui for the super chat, super sticker, keeping the Q&A ad-free and showing that this information is as good as I hope it is, hopefully showing. Yeah, so always keeping the outside telltale flying straight back like that. Now, 10 knots of wind. If you've got the inside telltale flying straight back as well, then I would say you could go a bit higher, because what we should be looking for in that sort of wind strength would be this inside telltale lifting, and not lifting vertically, but certainly lifting somewhat. Now, how do you know if we were sailing like this was our original course, then I think to get it lifting like that, we can squeeze another couple of degrees out of the boat. Yeah, like this. How do we know if we can do that? Well, just by doing it. Basically, turn the boat up towards the wind slowly, smoothly, keep everything mega smooth, and just, you know, you're sailing along, telltale's flying straight back, then just take it a bit closer to the wind, see what that does to your boat speed. Now, if your boat starts slowing down immediately, it could be a number of things, but what it could be is that you haven't got enough tension in your main sheet. Now, I know that Tim sails an older 16, which means that the mast settings aren't quite as straightforward as that on a newer boat. But what can happen is if you've put your mast too far back, hello, let's get some more materials. Yes. All right, can we go down here? I think that we can. It's going to be worth it. So if the mast is too far back, then we haven't got physically enough space between the back beam and the boom to be able to get tension into the leech of the sail. Now, we talked about this a few weeks ago. If we look at the boat from the back on the beach, and if this is our mast, is that going to stay there? Yes, it is. When we have the boat on the beach like this, mainsail up, boat pointing into the wind so we don't capsize, get all the battens in the main on the same side, just like you would after a tack or a jibe. Pull on the downhaul to your minimum downhaul setting. And then what you want to do is bring the main sheet in. This is the leech of our mainsail. And what we're trying to do is bring the main sheet in until, looking directly from behind, the leech of the mainsail is lining up with the mast, or is just a little bit, here we go, a little bit off being in line at the top. Because what that means is that is the most main sheet we can possibly pull in. Because if we pull in any more and the leech comes to windward of the mast, then we're going to stall our airflow and slow down. But if we can't get the leech in line with the mast, what that means, and this goes for every type of catamaran period, if we can't get the leech in line with the mast, perhaps because the mast is too far back, then we're never going to be able to point particularly close to the wind. Because when we head up to this, where B is here, we're just not going to have the drive to take us that high. So we need to bring the mast a bit more upright. There we go. All right. So that is phase one. Get it so that this is set up nicely. And yeah, we want to have the mast reasonably far back, especially on a 16, because the further back we have the mast, the more that is going to drive the boat into the wind, but without it being so far back that we can't sheet in. All right. Then what's next? Crew position. In the lighter wind, so in 10 knots, we should be able to find the sweet spot on the hull to some degree just by feeling what it's like on the rudders. If you're too far forwards, once the boat starts getting a bit of heel on, you're going to feel that the rudders get very heavy and unresponsive. So then you're going to need just to move back a little bit because we're loading up that leeward hull more. And we don't want to be driving the bows down, which is going to be lifting the back of the boat up, meaning we haven't got enough rudder in the water. So in lighter winds, what we're looking to do with any type of boat up until the flat bottomed boats like the modern F18 shape is we're trying to have the hull perfectly flat so that we're putting as much of that wall of the hull into the water as possible, which is going to stop the boat from sliding sideways and helping to get more lift, which is going to get us closer to the wind. Then as the wind gets stronger, what we want to start doing is, because we're going faster, we start to get more lift off the rudder blades. So we'll move our weight backwards slightly, which is going to put slightly less of the wall of the hull into the water. It's going to load up the rudder blades more, which is going to give us lift towards to get us sailing higher, making less leeway and getting to our windward objective quicker. Yes. So there is a balance. If it doesn't feel right, the first thing, if it doesn't feel right, when did you last look at your rudders on land? If your rudders aren't locking down correctly all the way into the stock, then it's never really going to feel right. So make sure that's right first. But if when you're sailing, it's not feeling right, then just try a very small movement in your crew weight. Just turning the heater off. It was chilly earlier. We actually had hailstones earlier. Greece, I know. Greece, nearly April, hailstones. What is going on? Yeah, so I think that is pretty much where we are. So there are a few things for improving that upwind performance. Yes. So on the bigger boat, the Supercat 17, what we're looking to do is get that hull absolutely level. We're not trying to get bows down. We just want to have it completely flat. With the rig tuning on something like a Supercat, I would be looking at going down the same sort of route as that on a legacy Formula 18, like a Hobie Tiger. And we'll just have a quick look at this. The main one being the mast rake. So I've just been chucking stuff on the board throughout, and it's got a bit cluttered. So sorry, just looking for another boat. Oh yeah, lovely. All right, so here we go. Legacy Formula 18, which is right now masquerading as a Supercat 17. And what we want to do with the mast rake, we're going to measure the mast rake using the a trapeze wire. We're going to do this when we've got rig tension on. Have I got a trapeze? I've got a trapeze wire here, but it's not going to do it. So what we're going to do with the rig tension on is we're going to take our trapeze wire and we're going to swing it forwards. This is on land, by the way, of course. And we're going to put the trapeze wire forwards onto the bow tang, the fitting on the bow, and then with a bit of tension on there, and you might have to add a bit of rope to your trapeze wire to make it long enough to do this. We're then going to swing the trapeze to the back, still under tension, and see where it goes to at the back. And we're looking to get it roughly near to the corner of the hull. That is a good starting point to put it. I don't know the exact tuning for a Supercat, but that is what I would look at. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm just going to dive back into the live chat before going on to the next part of Christian's question. And this is where the juice is really going to start. Sorry, good idea to clean up as I go. Otherwise, we are in a mess. All right, so back into the live chat. All right, we got Max on board in Rosenheim, Germany. Great to have you on board, Max. Greetings from snowy Rosenheim. 50 centimeters of fresh powder on the slopes nearby. Yeah. So, ever so slightly gutted that the snowy season has come. It hasn't come to an end period, but for me, it is definitely finished now for this year. Until December, and we've got Tucker's bow tie, who says, "Hi Joe, how did the op go?" Yes, I'd seen your question there, and that is why my winter season finished, because I've just been in for an operation last Wednesday, which means I'm what am I now 8 days into recovery, and yes, feeling better, but still not 100%. So my recovery is going to be, it's kind of a bit of a delay to my sailing season. So those great videos that you've been looking forward to, hammering it across Vasiliki Bay, go first sail of the season, are going to be somewhat delayed. So middle of April, I'm going to the UK for 2 weeks, and then coming back for a week of coaching. So by the time I get back from the UK, I am going to be on the water, week of coaching, and then full-time video. And then I've actually got, I think it's the second week in May, I believe, I'm running a Hobie Tiger race week clinic, race training week, out of Wildwind Sailing Holidays, would you believe, Vasiliki, Lefkas, Greece. If you haven't already signed up for this, unfortunately, you've missed out. But that is going to be an absolute mega week of great sailing and good knowledge transfer. But if you are coming to Vasiliki at all, do be sure to say hello, and I'm sure you would. Cheers. All right, so continuing. Yeah, but the op went well. Everything as good as could have been hoped for. All right, next question. This one's come from Christian in British Columbia. And this is the question of, here's looking at the boat from the back. Let's say wind is coming from this side, so we're on starboard tack. Should the traveller ever go above the centreline to improve upwind performance? Now, on keel boats and yachts, which are a type of keel boat, of course, it is quite regular, quite normal on an upwind course to pull the traveller to the windward side. Have I got a boom here? Can I get a boom? Here we go. There's our boom. And the idea with pulling the traveller to windward like this, so here's our main sheet. the idea of having the Traveller like this is so that we can get the boom into the centerline of the boat without having to crank on a fierce amount of main sheet tension, because on a lot of yachts and keel boats, the main sheet is coming from much further forwards, so it doesn't have the same sort of leverage that we have on a catamaran. So to pull the main sheet into in tight enough on a yacht or a keel boat to get the boom properly into the onto the center line is going to require a huge amount of tension. And to do that amount of tension, what is the sail going to look like? Our leech is very likely going to be hooked, so coming to the windward side of the mast, stalling the airflow. It's going to be terrible, which is why on a yacht or a keel boat with less of this sort of sideways leverage on the mainsail and with a much heavier boom, perhaps a much taller rig, it's more efficient to bring the Traveller to the windward side, use the main sheet to put the boom in the correct position. We've then got other controls. So there's our sail on our keel boat. There's our boat. So we've got the main sheet that's coming from here, and then to control, so angle of attack of the sail, Traveller. Holding the angle of attack, we've got the main sheet, and then leech tension, that's the big one. We're using the vang, because on a yacht you call it a vang, you don't call it a kicking strap. Oh no, that's just for dinghy sailors. Yeah, so we use the vang for leech tension, main sheet to hold the boom, Traveller, angle of attack. Now, why don't we do that on a catamaran? Well, I was thinking about this and I was thinking, oh, maybe it's worth another try, because it is something that I've tried in the past, didn't work. Why wouldn't we do that? It's because the only thing that we've got controlling our leech tension is the main sheet. And if we pull the Traveller to the windward side, we need to keep the main sheet at a very set length to not bring the boom further over the center line. So for the boom not to go over to the windward side, of course, as we've said, if any of the sail goes to the windward side of the boat, it's going to stall our airflow and we're going to sail really, really slowly with a turbulent airflow. So that is why we can't bring the Traveller to windward, because if we want any tension in the leech, so like this, the leech would be off like this, because we've got no downward tension pulling the leech tight. So we're not going to be able to sail close to the wind. You know, you could possibly, and this is just off the top of my head, you could possibly bring the Traveller to windward, and actually, if we're sailing upwind like this, we could actually crab the boat upwind, jib flapping because we can't get it in tight enough, but we could actually sail really close and really slow to the wind by having the Traveller on the windward side, main sheet in tight. We then kind of go sideways upwind, dead slow. But main thing, not efficient, too easy to oversheet, no control of the leech of the sail because we don't have a kicker. And the way that the catamaran is designed is that the main sheet is the kicker and the main sheet combined. So that is the why. All right, just back into the live chat because I see that Sunset Wingman has arrived. Sunset Wingman, who I've met in not Ocean Springs, in Hilton Head. South Carolina last year. Random question. All right, so we're into it. I was thinking maybe you were going to comment on this, but do you know on the Tornado if you'll normally sheet the spinnaker evenly relative to the foot leech, or is the block set up for a little bit of extra twist? Yeah, so all right. Sorry, I'm just going to check that I finished this one first. Yes, and then we've got one more point from Christian afterwards. All right, so now what Sunset Wingman is asking is, with the spinnaker, where are we? Can I have a boat, please? All right. Right, just bear with me a sec, if you could. And this wouldn't just be on the Tornado, this would be on most spinnaker boats. And what the question is if we just draw our spinnaker on. Oh, I've got a pole marked spinnaker pole. God, that's long. Why are we? No. Ah, that's for a different thing. All right. Apologies here. Just showing a bit of professionalism in the Joyrider TV studios. So I could have just answered this really quickly, to be honest. But do we want to have, with the spinnaker, an even pull amount of tension in the foot and in the leech, which would mean if we were going to do that, we would set our sheeting angle, like for the example of this picture here, it would probably be like this, And in fact, let's get rid of the mast. Yeah, sheeting angle like this for even. So yes, I would go for even sheeting in less powered conditions. When you're really having to work to get that windward hull to come out of the water, then I would certainly go for even sheeting on the spinnaker. And then as the spinnaker loads up with pressure, the leech is going to naturally open a bit, somewhat. And then once you get into that wind where you can fly the hull all of the time, the optimal would be, and it's pretty rare that I actually change my sheeting angle, to be honest. But the optimal is to have it slightly further back. So how do I go about actually making this happen when sailing? If the wind is really light, then what I get the crew to do is to sheet it normally, but also to have a hand on the sheet physically coming from the spinnaker, so they can just push that forwards, so their arm becomes a bit like a barber hauler. Now, a barber hauler is a trimming line that changes where the sheeting angle is coming from. So I actually get them to be like a human barber hauler, just getting that sheeting angle a bit more down, closing the leech, which is going to encourage the hull to lift earlier. And that is the only difference that I would make. But yes, my normal sheeting angle is with the leech of the sail slightly more open for more twist. There we go. All right, Jens has just tuned in and he has come in hot with a super sticker. I think the difference actually is the super sticker has got an animated character. Thanks very much, Jens. Great to have you on board. And Bernhard is come in with a super chat, which I believe is when there's not an animated character. But thank you very much. Super stickers and super chats, which keep the Q&A ad-free. Thank you. Jens says it's been a while. Certainly has. Christian is in there with a super chat. Christian says, looking forward to getting some good perspective on better sail shape, better windward performance soon. Yes. Yeah, so this is like a great time of year to be, well, as soon as your season starts, to go out for a sail, see what works, see what doesn't work, think, should this boat be going faster? And if you do feel it can be going faster, but you don't know well, then report back to the Q&A with your findings, and we can talk about it, see what we can do to make your boat go faster. All right, nice. So next part of the question from Christian is, when sailing reefed? Yeah, this is good. This is a good question. I don't think we've had this question before ever, which you know, there's very few questions for the first time these days. When sailing reefed, does the center of effort moving forward hurt upwind performance, and how should you compensate? It's a pretty tricky question, actually, but yes, if you were sailing a boat which I'm gonna still need the mast. If you're sailing a boat which just has a mainsail, then the change to your center of effort would be pretty minimal. So our reefed mainsail like that. So the center of effort being where the majority of the power comes from in the rig. So if we were to look at the sail from the top, if we're in the sort of wind where we're reefing, before we reef, well, we should do what we can to depower the sail anyway, which would be pulling on the downhaul. So the story of the downhaul would be no downhaul, sail is flat like a flag. This is looking from the top or the bottom. Downhaul onto the minimum setting, perhaps a bit of an exaggeration, and we've got a very even curve throughout the whole chord of the sail, the depth of the sail. As we pull more downhaul on, it moves the center of effort down and forwards. And what we're trying to achieve is getting the center of effort lined up with just to the back of the center of lateral resistance. There we go. Which is like that. So we're pulling the center of effort further forwards. How do we compensate for that? Well, the ideal would be to put a bit more mast rake on, or to trim the boat further back, because by trimming the boat further back slightly, it's going to effectively rake the mast back more and help to bring that center of effort further behind the center of lateral resistance. But what we're doing by having the center of effort further forwards is, if we think that the drive on the boat is perpendicular to the shape of the sail, the drive becomes like this, whereas when the curve is like this, it's pulling more sideways, which is great. It's giving us more power. But as we start going faster, we want to convert that power more into forwards rather than into having that sideways working against the flat side of the hull or the dagger board, which is going to propel us forwards. Great. So if we've got a jib as well, and the size of the jib is staying the same, then yes, as we reef the mainsail, the center of effort of our rig is going to go significantly further forwards, which is because more of our sail area as a percentage is going to be the jib. Yes, yes. Now, how do we compensate for this? Again, getting a bit further back on the boat. But one way of compensating for it is when we've reduced the amount of sail area in the main, we're going to have the main sheeted in much harder than we would do if we were still flying the full mainsail. And by doing that, it's giving us a bit more juice from the back of the boat, which should help to keep it feeling more balanced. Okay. But that is as far as I'm going to go on that for now, because we've been going for an hour now and I've still got more. And we've got RJ Fleet just tuned in, or maybe you've been there all along, but hello from Southwest Minnesota, USA. Great to have you on board. All right, next preloaded question. And this one comes from, if you subscribe to any of the Hobie channels on Facebook, you'll be no stranger to the work of James Carpenter in Lake Weber, Australia, currently leading the global speed stick competition as well. Now, James is in Australia, so I doubt he's here live. But James got a very interesting question, which is, and actually, after I've talked about this question, I'm going to announce the announcement that I said I was going to announce before. James's question is, what the difference in boat speed when sailing in fresh water compared to salt water? Just going to let that sink in for a second. Yes. Interesting. Yeah, so I've done some research on this because I wasn't totally clear on it, but I think the end result is pretty minimal. All right, here's my thinking of the science. There's not too much here, to be honest. So the salt water is more dense. So what does more dense water do for how your boat is floating? It's going to make the boat float higher up. All right, good so far. If there's anyone in the science department in the live chat, then do feel free to jump in on this. But the boat is going to sit higher in the water. Okay, there we go. There's a start. So if that was the end of it, boat sitting higher in the water, less drag, boat goes faster in salt water. Done. Okay, but the water is more dense, so it requires more pressure for the boat to pass through the water, which means boat goes a little bit slower, but the boat is sitting a little bit higher. So where do we finish up? Around the same. That is my scientific analysis of this question, and I'm going to park that there before I try going any further and get into trouble talking about stuff that I don't really understand. So there we go. Thank you very much for your time and understanding on that point. Yes, the big announcement. Yes, I've just found out today I have been invited by my friends at NACRA Sailing. I'm going to be coming back to Holland. So if you're in Northern Europe or Holland especially, yes, there is going to be an opportunity to meet up, have a few of those and a chat and say hello. And not only am I going to Holland to do some work with NACRA, but I am going to be participating in, yes, the biggest catamaran sailboat race in the world, the Round Texel Regatta this year, which I believe, hold on, check the date, will you? I think it's the 6th of, I'm going to check this, got to get it right. Is it the 6th? 6th of June is the Round Texel Regatta, or the Roland Texel, if you speak the language. It's the biggest catamaran race in the world in terms of participation numbers. Back in the day, they used to get 700 boats, but this year they are expecting 300 boats to be on the start line. And yeah, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be on the island of Texel for the full week leading up to that event. So I'll see you there if you're there. But I think that's an exciting announcement. Maybe it's more exciting for me than it is for you. But of course, there will be all sorts of content coming from that week there, hoping for some blue sky, some good wind, and some sweet sailing. Sweet sailing, almost guaranteed. All right. So next preloaded question. Yeah, you can always tell when I haven't done the Q&A for a week because there's a lot of preloaded questions. This one's coming from Eric, who says, Hobie 16 question, when you're putting 2 adjusters at the base of the forestay, sorry, this could have done this in preparation, couldn't I? But this would be like, oh, come on. All right, would be like this. So you've got your bridle wires coming in here, and then you'll see on the Joyrider TV Hobie 16 videos, mostly I'm using a double chain plate on the forestay like this. So the forestay actually goes right to the top, but the tack of the jib would come in down here. What is the point, firstly, of this top chain plate? Well, the point of this is because, as you may know, when we've got the jib up and the rig tension is taken on the jib on a Hobie 16, what is the forestay doing? Flopping around. And we don't want the forestay flopping around. So we use a piece of elastic pulling forwards, forestay on here. And what that piece of elastic does is it tensions the forestay so it's not flopping around. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid having to draw the picture. All right, so that is the number one thing, the point of the double chain plate adjuster on, do that later, on the forestay. All right, so Eric's question is, if you are going for this setup, do you need a shorter forestay cable? Answer, no, you shouldn't do. And what is the benefit from this? This is also going to allow you to, when you loosen the rig tension off for like a strong wind, you'll be able to sail with the mast raked back more, because it is going to give you more length at the front. When would you need a shorter forestay? I would say if using 2 chain plates, when you take the jib down and there's no tension in the rig, if it feels really quite worryingly loose, the rig, like your mast might just jump out of the mast base and might have a terrible moment, because like how loose is too loose? I think too loose, you're going to know. A bit loose, we'll do this once I've got a boat to look at. But if it is like worryingly loose, then I wouldn't go for the double chain plate. You don't want it worryingly loose. So that is what I would suggest there. Okay, Eric's final question is the Hobie 16 the only catamaran with jib battens? First answer. The Hobie 16, I believe, was the first production catamaran to have jib battens as standard. And that would be right up until, when would it have been? Just thinking on my feet here, until the late 80s, when I don't know if anything had jib battens before it, but the Hobie 20 certainly jib battens as standard. But up until then, I don't think that there was anything else using full jib battens as standard. So yeah, the Hobie 16 certainly pioneering in that arena. And then second part of the question is that what makes it so fast? It is certainly an ingredient to have that much power in the jib. So what the jib battens are doing, two things. One thing, if this is our jib, if we didn't have, with battens, it allows the jib to have, all right, firstly, if we didn't have jib battens, the leach of the jib would have to be slightly what we'd call scooped. So with an inward kind of curve to it, because otherwise, when you pull it tight, that thing's going to flap noisily, and it's going to be quite upsetting to your ears. So without any battens at all, the leach of the jib has to be scooped. But with these jib battens, we don't need to have a scooped leach, so the sail can be bigger. But what we're also getting from the jib battens is this locked in curve in the jib, which is delivering much more power than a soft jib would do. So yes, the jib is certainly one of the ingredients that does make the Hobie 16 so quick, especially on a reach, especially when it's windy. The jib battens aren't going to have such a big effect when you're sailing upwind, because apart from for the sail area, because when you're sailing upwind and you crank the jib sheet in tight, the jib is flattening off a lot, which means you're not really getting much benefit from the battens. Whereas on a reach, when you've got it slightly eased, to have it even with the curve locked in higher up when you haven't got much tension in the sail, that is going to provide more drive. Yes. All right. So finishing off live chat, Oliver Cuxolly says, yes, I will see you there. Excellent. That's one person I might know. All right. So there we are. What is coming up next? I've made the next boat explainer video. All of you who are channel members should are already able to see this. It's going to be out on Sunday on general release. It's about the Dart 18. Thought it was about time. I started sailing cats on Dart 18s, and it was nostalgic to take a look back at those bad boys. So check that out on Sunday, if not before. And otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for your continued support on Joyrider TV. Check out Joyrider Worldwide, the channel, the new community YouTube channel where everybody can upload their videos, which is going to make it potentially the biggest catamaran sailing thing on the internet, if everybody gets on board with that. And it, you know, so if you just want to watch catamaran sailing, you just go on Joyrider Worldwide on YouTube, on your telly, sit in your favorite chair with your favorite drink, and you just say Joyrider Worldwide, entertain me. And there's already, I think, about 12 videos on there, but with more coming up very soon. So check that out on YouTube. Otherwise, I'll see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Thanks for coming. All right. Now this is embarrassing. YouTube seems to have changed where the finish the transmission button is. All right, yeah, we might be here for some time. But yes, thanks for coming. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it has changed, but I found it in the end. So yeah, see ya. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.